Turn on the light. Start streaming. I think we're streaming. Start recording. I think the stream will be live any second. Looks like it's live. So we are good to go. It's Monday. Guess I should, I'll leave that on. It's hot. If I turn it off, it'll get way hot.
That fancy microphone
Oh, yeah?
has 3 settings. Off, on,
And mega on.
high pass filter.
Ah, so take the rumble out.
To air conditioning or the car.
So I have a high pass filter in here that in the pipeline that I just have disabled. I should probably tweak it and re-enable it. Actually, now I could use the. If I really wanted to, I should just record one day with me not enough of that noise, and then I can make the inverse filter. Yep. There's actually.
Here, I'll do it right now.
That actually, I'll do it later because I actually have to record it from where the microphones are. Otherwise, it'll be, there's people, there's one person watching. All right, let's go. It is. Nope, it's Tiago. Hat is live. Oh, because I got the hat on. There, it doesn't show you. It only shows this guy. All right, it is Monday. Whoop. Okay. It's Monday, June 12th, 2017. I'm Rim, and this is Geek Nights. Tonight, it is like 95 degrees out, and we're talking about that guy who deleted his production database at work and got fired, and how that's not his fault. All right. Oh, they're already complaining about how the thumbnail doesn't match. That is YouTube's problem. I've opened a ticket. YouTube does not seem to care. The caching is such that...
It's not YouTube's fault anymore. YouTube fixed it. If you update the thumbnail on a live stream on YouTube, it updates right away. The problem is Twitter, Facebook, all these other places, they cache.
Ah.
So when you post your link to your YouTube on Twitter, it uses like whatever's in its cache instead of like going to YouTube and updating it constantly.
They want me to spin the hat to prove it's live because I don't have a shoe handy.
Shoe on head?
Yep, so I spun the hat.
Or sock on head?
No.
I have a shoe on head.
All right, let's get right into it. So I haven't biked to work in a while because it's been cold and rainy, and also I've had a lot of meetings where I have to like wear a suit and like look at least semi-presentable. I filed all the paperwork in my building. Finally, was like, God damn it, and they just let me.
My building doesn't give a shit. My building's been foreclosed on, and like no one cares. I saw people bringing them on the other. There's only one other tenant, and they were just bringing them in the regular old elevator.
Make a deal with that other tenant. Be like, yo, I'll pay you like $5 if you let me just leave your bike in your place.
Oh, that's not the worst idea.
That's what I would try. My old company, a big part of why I quit was that they wouldn't let me bring my bike into the office.
Mm-mm.
I was kind of looking to quit anyway.
It doesn't
but that
make
was
me
like the
happy,
straw.
but it's like I can't. There is no better job out there. Otherwise, I would have left. But I've been here for 8 years because people call me up all the time, and their jobs aren't better.
Yep. It's I've gotten some.
If there was a better job, I'd go, but there isn't one.
I've had a few that were definitely.
I can't
better.
quit over something small like you're not letting me keep my bike in the office.
The ones that were better though recently are either very high risk of disappearing. You know how those things go. Or were jobs that they're better in every way except I don't want to do that job.
Someone said they can't hear me.
That's fixed long ago.
Okay.
So it's because I muted it when I plug and unplug your microphone to prevent a pop, and I just forgot to unmute it.
I thought it might have broken because you dropped it on the floor.
Nope, there is a pipeline that goes through the compressor to here, and there's a separate pipeline that goes in here. There's all these pipelines. It's like a complicated situation here. If we hit that Patreon level, I'll do a video explaining how all this is set up. But I digress.
Unnecessarily complicated.
I could make it way more complicated if I wanted to make it unnecessary. But yeah, it's super hot out. And over the weekend, me, Emily, and our friend Phil actually ran the Brooklyn Pride 5K race.
And you didn't win because you're
Of course
slow.
not. So the winner in my age group got a time. Actually, it was only like 18 or so minutes, I think.
Okay.
And overall, it was like 17 minutes.
What was your minutes?
21.
So you were 3 minutes slow.
Yeah.
So the person crossed the finish line, and then we counted to 180 and then rim across the finish line.
Yep. So I'm not gonna win these things because winning times on most of the 5Ks
If you think
I
about
run,
running 100, like just go outside and run and count. Set a timer for 3 minutes and see how far you run in 3 minutes. That's how far.
So I looked up the best 5K I've ever run because I actually have records of all this. Ever, like a race, a formal race where someone with a real system gave me a real like formal time. The best one I ran was exactly 20 minutes and some milliseconds. And so that's running like 6.5 minute miles ish. That was 3 years ago, and I feel like I will never do better than that again in the rest of my life.
See, I did. My plan actually, right, was
Oh, if you didn't get the flat tire?
if I didn't have the flat tire, is I was gonna, because I didn't realize until I got there. See, my original plan was just to leave and go to the barbecue.
Oh, you were
maybe-
gonna follow and like get a video of me be huffing and
Or-
puffing and being sweaty.
or
and-
maybe wait at the finish line. But because I had the flat tire, I went to the
Oh,
bike
if you've been
shop.
to the finish line, so
But the thing is, once I realized that, I thought the whole circle would be closed. When I realized it wasn't closed, I was like, oh, maybe we'll do some Lil Mac.
yeah.
And I would just go and I would try to go at a bad pace to mess you up and make you get all tired and fall over.
So you missed it. Actually, it's a shame that didn't happen
Did you
because
did you vomit again?
I vomited.
Oh, we
So
vomited.
so basically,
I even yelled at the beginning of the race, "Don't vomit!" And I
So-
realized I didn't say "rim, don't vomit." I just said "don't vomit," and I'm like, "Wow, everyone else is really wondering why I yelled that."
so it's a common thing. Like a lot of people vomit after like significant running races. More like 10Ks or marathons, or half marathons. But basically, it was real ozony and pretty hot, and there's a hill.
It wasn't that bad. That was a good day.
Yeah, it was way better than like today.
Mm.
But the ozone was like 85-ish during the race. So like everyone, like all of us, like the times across the board were slower than like people would probably get on a nicer day. And also that hill, like I don't train on hills at all usually. But
It's a baby hill.
to avoid the crowd, I started near the front and I tried to follow, not the front
I
runners.
did see you at the start. You were nearish. You were nearer the front than you should have been, and you were trying harder than it looked like you should have tried.
No, my only goal was to get ahead of the main body so I didn't have to deal with people and to not keep up with the front runners because those are people who are like professional runners. Like those are people who are shooting for a 16-minute. I wanted to keep up with the people who are one group behind them. And I kept up with them. Like I picked a guy and I was like, I'm following him because he looks pro and he's keeping a pace. I'm going to follow his exact pace because I don't keep good paces when I'm by myself. And I kept up with him until the 2.5 mile mark. And then he slowly started disappearing in the distance. And then I pushed to try to catch up. And I pushed a little too hard, and I basically there's this woman at the end like taking photos with like a really nice camera, and I'm running, and I see the camera come up like she's gonna take a picture of me, and I immediately turn my head to the left and just explode vomited behind me, and then I turned right and just kept running, and I saw her like bring the camera down, like what the fuck, and it was real funny, and then
Was anyone else vomiting?
I saw a couple other people vomit after they crossed the finish line. Not a ton of people, though.
You should really do something about this.
Yeah, you know what I should do about that? Either not push myself that hard or actually train. I haven't been training much lately. But anyway, I digress. Races are fun, and it's a hobby of mine. And Scott came out and hung out, and then we didn't go to the Pride Parade because it was actually at night.
I did so much stuff on Saturday. First, I went to that race.
Yup.
Then I had a
You went
flat tire. I went to the bike shop.
Yep.
Then I
And
went
then
to
you
the-
found the nice bike shop. You went to 2 bike shops.
Well, then I went. Well, the one was closed. Then I went
Yeah.
to the barbecue, and then I went to the mural project. And then on Sunday, I live streamed all those things. So if you followed my YouTube channel, you could have seen all those things. They're still there, I guess. And then on Sunday, I just went to the barbecue. I didn't
Yep.
I did less, but I still did plenty.
Yeah, well, Sonny went to the barbecue. We hung out in the park for a while, eating barbecue and chilling, and then we played some board games and did some stuff. It was a good day. It was a good weekend, all told. Had some friends out. Now I got to finish a bunch of kinetic. I got a lot of work to do in the next couple weeks. And I got to go to London. So, yeah, 2 weeks from now there won't be shows because I'll be in London pretty much all week.
Good luck with that. They got problems.
Nothing that'll affect me.
I'm just saying.
Scott, a lot of the places I go have had attacks like that. In fact, like
Well, I'm not talking about that.
Oh.
I'm just saying they got problems.
like what?
Exity problems.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Brexit stuff actually doesn't affect me that much.
Not yet.
And most of what so it's funny because what I'm doing there is I'm going to a convention where I'm on a panel about MiFID II, which is this European regulation that affects the UK now, but might not affect the UK after Brexit, but Europe might force them to do it anyway, or they won't build. There's actually a pretty, it's somewhat funny that I'm on a panel about MiFID II in London while Brexit is in the process of potentially happening. So in the news, Scott, you sent me this link and we both read it, and it's just sort of I'm not going to vouch for like all the reporting in this.
Yeah, it's just some guy's blog.
Yep. But I've stumbled across this blog multiple times in the past. It's always been pretty okay. So the story here, Scott sent me the link, is basically talking about...
Like usually you read an article, right? And an article has like one bomb it drops and like has one quote pull that like, pull quote that is like, that tells you what the big deal is. And all the rest of it is just filler words, right?
Yep.
This one is just dropping bombs in like every paragraph. Like, oh shit, oh that's what's going down, oh shit.
I recommend, actually, if you listen to GeekNights Monday, just go to this page and read this article, because we're not going to read it to you. And there's a lot of fascinating stuff.
But it basically tells this story about, Microsoft and Intel, right, being dependent on each other, but also competing with each other, trying to like gain dominance in this sort of partnered relationship, right? And in doing so, right, locking in the backwards compatibility of, the Wintel platform all the way back to the earliest x86 code.
Yep.
And how time and time again, people tried to bust in there, but couldn't bust in. They could, no one from the outside could attack them, right? But Nvidia, has finally, going to succeed in the near future, right? And the really fascinating stuff is when it talks about the different technological decisions made by all these companies for competitive reasons, right? Like, Intel didn't put too many PCI Express lanes.
That's the one I was going to bring up.
On the chipset, because then that would mean that, Nvidia things could be so fast that you wouldn't care about the Intel stuff anymore, right? Or, they didn't, Intel was trying to virtualize all of Windows at one point, so that way, Windows could be disposed of, and you could just run your code on Intel stuff directly.
So here's an example. On a current like i7 Intel chip.
And then Microsoft made DirectX in order to, prevent Intel from doing that, and so and so.
But you'll get like 16 PCI Express lanes. So if you have one video card, it'll use all 16. If you got two, one of them will use 8, and the other one will use 8, or like 8 and 4. And there's all these. If you buy an expensive one, you might get 20 lanes. Like I think my motherboard has 20, so I can have a video card and the PCIe SSD.
Right. It also talks about like Intel put those GPUs in the CPUs because that way only super gamers would put Nvidia equipment in.
Yep. So you're locking
normal people wouldn't have that, so that way you couldn't build direct. You couldn't basically, as software developers, you couldn't build for Nvidia because people don't have it, because only the super gamers have it. Normal people have integrated Intel stuff,
which really puts into light the idea that Kaby Lake, the next Intel chipset, has native support for 4K and like video stuff.
But it's like basically all of this stuff is. You're just trying to get it's competition for developers, right? They want people to write software in a certain way, because if software runs on their platforms, then they sell their platforms. And if developers start writing software that runs on a different platform, people don't need their platform anymore, right? So that's what happens when you make an operating system or hardware. You need the most is developers writing software for your shit, because if that's what really sells products, is people aren't buying, Wintel because they like it. They're buying it because Photoshop runs on it, right?
And it also runs on Mac, but Macs are super underpowered.
Right, but that's also even Intel.
Yeah, it's Intel,
at this point,
but it's a different platform.
But if the software that people want to run runs on something else, if it runs on 100% NVIDIA equipment, they're not going to buy no Intel Garbo.
The only problem is, like, it's talking about GPUs are, like, faster and scaling faster and all that, but...
because they weren't hindered by the backwards compatibility in their architecture decisions.
But they also use a ton of power.
I think that's the one thing, is, like,
and generate a shit ton of heat.
Yeah,
it is shocking. If I play Overwatch and I, like, use OBS to like live stream it and use OBS separately to encode to my disk, like my computer gets so hot that it hurts my feet if they're near the exhaust ports.
Because this is what happened, right? Is like, for a while in like the Pentium 4 era, right, when we were having like AMD computers that set on fire, AMD was basically going the route of like the hot rod. Like, we don't care about heat generation. We'll just put bigger and crazier heat sinks on there. We don't care about power efficiency. We'll just go as fast as we can and burn all the fuel. Fuck fuel efficiency, right? Intel, the Pentium 4, kind of did that, but then it wasn't working too great. So then they were like, all right, we actually need to make CPUs that are efficient because we got laptops and things, right? We want to not use a lot of electricity to get more battery life, and we want to, get more processing done per unit electricity. We want to be more stable and less crashy and more reliable. And that was the good road to go down. They beat AMD going on that road, also using dirty business tricks that you can read about elsewhere, right?
Yep, and also bringing their prices down because they had their prices high because no one competed with them.
Yep.
As soon as there was a competitor, suddenly Intel chips got better and cheaper.
Right,
so.
but GPUs, right, basically never gave a fuck. They're just like, hot rod all the way. Just stick 1,000,000 fans on there and use all the power in the world. In fact, now you have to plug in 2 more power cables from your power supply because we need more power. We don't care about power efficiency. We don't care about, pretty much anything except getting the most possible processing power, right? Use all the juice you got. Yeah, you need an 800-watt power supply now because you got 2 of these bad boys. It's like, we don't give a shit. And that's why they're faster. If Intel had been like, we don't give a shit, it would be faster too. But the backwards compatibility, also, didn't allow them to be as parallel as the GPUs are, right? GPUs are crazy parallel. Like, you talk about 16 cores in your CPU, the GPU's like, whatever. I got
So remember I said, here's a specific example from the article. An Intel chipset, a modern one, will have 16, maybe 20 PCI Express lanes. Quote here, IBM has also partnered with Nvidia to produce a generation of monster number crunching CPUs with the Power 9 sporting 160 PCIe lanes.
Yep.
160 instead of 16. 10x.
Yep.
And the Ryzen's, I didn't know this until relatively recently, the AMD Ryzen CPUs, because they don't give a fuck about protecting Intel's x86 market share.
They don't care.
They're putting shit tons of PCIe lanes in their new chips.
Yep, they got tons.
So it's interesting that in light of all that, because that's not mentioned in this article, I don't think, but you might have seen Intel announced recently their Core i9s, which as far as I can tell are just Skylake chips that have more cores.
Yeah, they're not even the newest Lake. They're the previous Lake.
Yeah, they're not Kaby Lake. They're Skylake as far as I know and as far as anyone has been able to tell me. So
it's just so fascinating that we're going to see this, it really makes you believe that the move away from Wintel and over to ARM plus GPUs, and not Windows and Intel is actually happening for reals now because people are doing less and less on desktop computers, right? Everyone's using
only
phones
professionals and gamers use workstations anymore.
Right. All your self-driving cars and your pretty much everything that's not a desktop computer is, probably going to run on some ARM NVIDIA type of thing. But also just to see all of the technological decisions made by these companies for business competitive reasons, right, is really fascinating. Because normal developers, when you're at work, you don't work for these big places making these kinds of decisions. You just try to make the best technological decision you can for the sake of just technology and saving money and whatever. You're not saying, aha, let's make DirectX so that Intel doesn't put us out of business.
So look at this. There's a lot of software that could get a huge advantage from having native GPU processing built in, say games do or Adobe stuff like Premiere does, right? But Adobe and game companies only develop for that stuff because they know that 100% of the people using their software, or at least 90%, have the NVIDIA hardware because that's just what you do. So as a result, they have a reason, their user base they know the hardware's there. It's kind of like how you can assume when you design modern software that most people who are using it have a mouse plugged into their computer. But imagine if only weirdos used mice. Then you wouldn't be making software. Games wouldn't support mice natively.
Yep.
So, total aside, but someone in the chat pointed this out. They're all shocked that we know who Alex St. John is.
I don't know who that is. Is
Really?
the guy who wrote the article?
So
it's a name I've heard, but I know nothing about him.
So in the chat, there's a message here. I legit remember this article because this is the first time I remember this so clearly. It was on the back page of a Maximum PC 18 years ago about driving a Hummer into a pond covered in freshly cut grass while he worked for Microsoft.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure it's the exact same dude.
Probably. I don't know anything about him. Is he a good dude or a bad dude?
I mean, I only stumble upon this blog occasionally, and usually because it's linked to from Slashshot. So
I don't know if he's good or bad dude, but he wrote a good article. So
Yeah.
about technology.
this is fascinating, and if anything we just talked about touches on anything you do in your career, you should at least pay attention to what's going on in this space, because this might be a big inflection point that's coming
I
up.
definitely want to, like, it's like, hey, you should probably learn to write software for, these sort of ARM NVIDIA type
It's
platforms.
such a pain in the ass.
But if you learn
Oh
that,
my
if you
God.
learn how to write that stuff using like the Vulkan stuff, right? That's probably going to be beneficial to you if you're job seeking.
Wait a minute. So the other thing is that, remember, Intel actually has another entrenched interest because they want to push their Intel Phi programming for this. That's like instead of GPUs to do that kind of
Well,
work.
Intel's was pushing FPGAs, right?
So they want you to use the Phi, which it's sort of like FPGAs, but it's sort of like you'll have a processor here that has 68 cores, and there's ways to, like, you can run most x86 type software on those cores with some limitations. And I learned all about it at work a while ago, and then I forgot most of it because it's not like I'm not developing any software on it. But this is another situation where Intel is pushing this thing, but NVIDIA and others might be able to provide an alternative. So keep an eye on all this biz. In some actual science news, this is a pretty, like, tentative study, but I'm partly bringing it up because I'm biased toward it, because I think that e-cigarettes are a high indicator of douchebaggery in my anecdotal evidence of interacting with humans who use e-cigarettes on a regular basis.
Well, the thing I've noticed about e-cigarettes that's more bothersome, actually, it's like a dude who used to smoke, who's already a bad person, right? Is now smoking an e-cig just as regularly as they were smoking the regular cig. It's like, all right, well, it smells less bad in the world, so I guess it's a little better.
But then they start using it, like, in buildings instead of going out to the street.
Right. But the thing that bothers me, I think, about the e-cigarette is that you had people who would otherwise never smoke ever, right? They would smoke nothing. But if you, like, you'll be at, like, a party, and it's like, if at the party someone passed around a real cigarette, all these people would have been like, no. But if someone passes around an e-cigarette, everyone would be like, oh, all right.
I've never seen anyone pass an e-cigarette around unless they were smoking marijuana out of it.
I'm just saying, marijuana or otherwise, right? People who otherwise would not smoke because of vaporizers seeming to be less deadly, right? People who otherwise don't do it are open to doing it in certain social situations that they otherwise would not.
Well, it's just like the people I see most often, like the people I notice vaping are the ones the worst, because a lot of people who use vapes tend to do it discreetly, and they go outside just like they would for a cigarette, but they do this instead. So instead of smelling like ass mixed with ass, they smell like light ass mixed with cotton candy or whatever.
Right.
Which is still pretty annoying.
The point is, it doesn't matter how you poison yourself. Poisoning yourself isn't cool.
I mean, I poisoned myself. I'm drinking some wine right now.
It's not cool. Don't.
Why? Wine's great.
No, it's not.
But the article, anyway, I digress. The article is simply that there is some significant evidence that, irrespective of whether or not you even have nicotine in your stupid e-cigarette, the substrate itself, the vape juice, even if you don't put anything in it, if it's just unadulterated, nothing, just vape juice, causes pretty much the same DNA damage that smoking cigarettes does.
Right. So this isn't about lung damage. It's not about, mouth cancer.
Or like the deleterious effects of nicotine itself.
Right.
This is just the vape substrate.
This is just about DNA damage only. Is probably just as bad. So I guess maybe that is cancer, but not, I guess you won't get emphysema probably.
Probably.
I won't say, not going to
But they didn't test for that.
The point is, people act like, oh, it's like, no, you're still poisoning yourself. Don't fool yourself.
The thing is, what I'm mostly annoyed with e-cigarettes is that a lot of people who would otherwise sort of surreptitiously or just like go out and have a cigarette, and like while they smell like open asses when they come back to whatever it is they left to go smoke, they don't smoke as performative behavior the way that I see a lot of vape people doing. Like, vape people seem to be more and more into like big clouds of vape and like, hey, look at me. I'm vaping.
I don't care about the social aspect of it.
Oh no,
as
but there's
much
a
as I
high
care
correlation
about,
between the social aspect
I don't
and
want
douchebaggery.
human beings poisoning themselves. and it's not cool to poison yourself, and it's really upsetting if you see someone that you care about poisoning themselves. Imagine if they were drinking real poison. It's like, oh, they're only drinking a little bit of poison, so it's not bothering me so much.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
I drink alcohol.
Stop poisoning yourself.
It's delicious though,
Is-
and humans co-evolved with it over
I
centuries.
mean, cocaine makes you feel real good. Maybe I should go snort some of that.
Cocaine's way more dangerous. I got no interest in cocaine.
Oh, so if I'm falling off a bridge, if I jump off a bridge, but I fall really slow.
Scott, water can poison you.
But I still die when I
if
hit
you drink
the
too much water,
bottom.
you'll die.
I'm just saying.
Just saying. Just saying.
You also die if you don't drink any water.
Don't go biking when there's a lot of ozone. That's carcinogenic. That's poisonous.
I don't bike too much if there's a lot of ozone. I can't
No?
go very far.
Yeah. Yeah, biking
Time
home
to
from work
go home.
today was took me an extra 10 minutes because I was one, it was 95 degrees, and two, there's a lot of ozone in the air, so I was biking a little slow.
Mhm.
All right, that's good enough, I think, for the news. Hey. But anyway, things of the day. What do you got for me, Scott?
So there's these dudes, and I lost the link to them.
I got the link here.
All right, I forget who they are. What's the guy's YouTube name?
WW2
Wendell.
Wendell.
World War II Wendell, right? And this guy is in
Wendell?
Yeah, he's in Leicester, England. Leicester? I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. Whatever. And there is the River Soar, SOAR. And they are doing an activity which I had not heard of before, which
But
is
apparently, based on YouTube recommendations, is a common activity.
it's called magnet fishing, and that's you already can imagine what it is. You take a big ass fucking magnet. They got a really big one here, like one that's so strong that it's really strong. You don't want to mess around with it.
What was
and
the
they put
joke? It was like, if this was in a box in the boat and it went over the Titanic, it would have brought the Titanic up.
Yeah, so you tie a rope around that shit, and the strength of the rope better be really strong because the magnet might just get stuck on something and you end up pulling nothing out, right?
Yup.
You toss it in a river, you move it around till it goes clunk on something metal, and you yank that shit up and you see what's at the bottom of the water.
This is 1,000 times more cooler than those lamos walking around beaches with metal detectors.
It's also way cooler than actual fishing because what do I want with some useless ass fish from a disgusting river that you're not going to want to eat when I
Yeah.
could get a useful human-made metal object from the bottom of a river?
Like, not one, but two stolen safes.
Safes. That's like the most coolest thing you can find is a safe. Yeah, what metal detector guy on the beach? What'd you find? Some coins? This dude found fucking safes. Plural.
Didn't they, like, call the police? Because one
Yeah,
looked like
one of them was a recently stolen safe, and you look at the safe, there's like a hole blasted in the front of it, or drilled in the front, and that they took all the loot out of. And they found it was like a recent robbery, and someone who tossed the safe into the river, and they found it, so they called the cops to come check it out. But yeah, maybe we should do some. Is it legal to magnet fish in like the East River?
Looks like a lot of people are doing it. I just Googled for magnet fishing East River. Magnet fishing best finds from the river. Yeah,
You want a
people-
magnet find in, you know where?
I know where.
Gowanus Canal?
You know what we're going to find? We're going to find a barrel full of poison.
At least you won't smoke it.
The only problem with this is that that the magnet he bought was like $500.
Yeah, you're gonna spend the 500.
And
bucks.
two, I remember the last time we had an idea like this, and we went dumpster diving a bunch, and we got a
magnet
whole bunch
fishing
of
is
shit,
way better than dumpster diving.
and we were like, oh, we'll sell it all. We didn't sell any of
We're not
it.
gonna sell them stuff we find magnet fishing. We're just gonna dump right back in the water. We're
I'm
not.
pretty sure it's actually illegal to dump it back in the water because that's dumping.
We'll leave it right on the beach.
So my thing of the day, Phil showed this to me over the weekend. Apparently, it went viral a couple of years ago, and I just never noticed. It is called My Cousin Oscar, and Oscar lives in Iceland. And in Iceland,
It's cold.
they don't get a lot of sunlight in the winter.
People always talk about like, oh, the Vikings were trying to be silly, like internet people, right? They called the Greenland Iceland and the Iceland Greenland, but no, Iceland is also an Iceland. They're both Icelands. They just called one of them Greenland to be funny. The other one was true.
But Oscar found out about the concept of daylight saving time in America
He didn't know about it.
and Australia.
They don't have that in Iceland.
Most places don't have it.
So he
And-
didn't even know it was a thing.
And he's pissed off about it and how we make
I'm
all
also
this-
pissed off about
Yeah,
it.
I'm pissed off. I feel like we should go back a couple hours, like go to ADT,
Right
and just
now,
stay there
right
forever.
now, the way the time is in the summer, I wake up at like 7-ish. The sun's already fucking up. Like, you don't see no sunrise, which means we need to move that shit. So, like, the sunrise should be 1 or 2 hours later in the day, right?
Sun should rise just as I get to work, so
Like-
I get as much daylight as possible.
Yeah, the sun
after
should
work.
rise like 6:37. And then, right now, the sun is setting at 8:30-ish, right? It's like, why can't the sun set at like 8, 9:30, 10, something like that? If we move the sunset up, we could have the sunset. If we move the sunrise up, the sunset could be like 10, 11, and then as soon as it gets dark, I go to bed.
Something that was always nice as a kid is that
I could hang out in the park all that time.
both
I could
Detroit
go biking until like 10, no problem.
Detroit and Cedar Point are in the same time zone as New York, but they're way to the west. So we end up getting more daylight in the evening as a result.
I'm just saying, that's what we should be doing, right? And then if you want to move the clock around, move it to keep the sunrise close to wake up time as possible.
But Oscar is dumbstruck that we have this giant, like, biannual argument about daylight saving time over 1 fucking hour. He is like, 1 hour? I would do anything to have another hour of daylight. I get 3 hours of daylight. Do you want to see my dog? Oh, you can't because it's fucking dark. It's 3 p.m. right now. Let's go to the beach. Oh, I would die. The video is just pretty funny, and I urge you to send this to people.
I think it's a little fake, the video.
Of course it is. It's very performative.
But
But at the same time,
he definitely used some After Effects to make it darker and such.
I don't think he did.
It's not really that dark.
I think he just has a crappy camera, as he pointed out several times.
He definitely did tricks to make it look darker than it is.
I mean, if I mean, when I was in-
like, I can make that video in New York. I just filmed the whole thing at midnight and change the time I watch.
I don't think he did because I looked up and the sun's only. It's up for like 4.5 hours in the middle of winter, but like the two ends of that 4.5 hours are dawn and dusk. There's only like 3 hours of actual sunlight.
It still seems a little bit exaggerated.
No, I mean, it just gets dark. It's dark, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meta moment, the book club book is Dune, Frank Herbert's. I'm going to update the website, and we're going to actually start reading it soon. You should follow Scott's YouTube channel and my YouTube channel. Both of them have good stuff on them. The Utena show is going to come back as soon as Kineticon's done, because I got to make sure that stuff's all out of the way. But I got the production pipeline set up, and after considerable effort, I have fought and won every goddamn copyright claim on the YouTube show.
Yeah.
Every one of the videos is viewable everywhere in the world.
Whoa, even Italy and such?
Yes. I filed like 50 fucking counter notifications. I like made a template. Holy crap. But I fought for you guys. The Utena show is up. I think it's going to stay up. And I have a way to probably avoid this for the future episodes. So shortly after Kineticon, we're starting that production pipeline up again in earnest. So stay tuned. Because actually, there's more Utena manga coming. So and also there's a Twitter account I follow that's an Utena bot that tweets like Utena screenshots every day. I'm feeling Utena again in a big way. So feeling doing that show. And there's sunlight, so we can do video shows in the evening and still have natural light coming in the window, which makes it way easier to do video. So stay tuned. It's coming. And I guess just right on to the main bit. So a lot of you might have seen this story.
This story got posted. I saw it where it was originally posted. I think on like programming Reddit maybe or something like that. Wherever it was originally posted, I saw it. And basically the story is this is some kid who was getting like an internship or like his first job out of college. Like brand new developer, right? He goes and gets a programming job wherever he can, and he's doing the employee set up your computer, which is when you're a developer, it's a little different because you have to not only
like development environment, build environment.
Yeah, you have to install it. You have to set up a bunch of stuff, and in doing so, the reason we don't just automate it and just give it to you already set up is because you learn how the shit works by setting it up, right?
Yep.
So he did it, and in doing so, accidentally erased the company's production database or whatever, and like they fired him because he messed up so bad.
Quote, the CEO told me to leave and never come back. He also informed me that apparently legal would need to be involved due to the severity of the data loss. I basically offered and pleaded to let me help in some way to redeem myself.
So I don't know.
And I was told, quote, I completely fucked everything up.
So I saw this story posted everywhere. I don't actually know if it's true. This could be a fake story.
But I can say this.
But it doesn't seem like it's advertising anything. So if it was a fake story that someone just wanted to spread around the internet to hoax people, there was no one who could gain anything from this story.
More importantly,
other than starting this discussion.
I have seen this exact same story, like the same type of story, occur many times in my professional life. I have heard anecdotes from people who did this thing. I have, like, this story, the beats of it, even if this individual story were not true, has happened time and time again. And I want to say categorically, 100%, it is never the person who fucked up production's fault. It is the fault of the CTO for not having controls in place to prevent that from occurring, not having backups, not having like a redundancy plan. It is never the developer's fault in this case.
Right. So here's the details of this specific instance, right? So the first problem was, why is it even possible for a developer on their computer sitting on their desk to connect to the production database? At my work, we have a production database, obviously.
Yep, same
This
with me.
production database is on Amazon's cloud or whatever, right? You cannot, there is no network access to it from anywhere except a few whitelisted web servers that are supposed to connect to it.
Yep, every company I've ever
You
worked
cannot
for,
connect to it except from those machines.
the developers are on their own subnet. They can only access the source repositories and their own servers and like
the internet.
staging areas
Right.
and the internet. Of course, the internet.
Right. But it's like you could not, no matter how hard you tried, no router that existed on the internet anywhere would route a packet from your computer to that database server. You cannot communicate with it. It's absolutely impossible to do so.
Yep.
And you would need like SSH keys, and someone would have to make those for you by hand and specifically grant you access and tell you how to somehow connect through various machines to get there. There is no way you could accidentally do anything to it whatsoever.
It's called
Now-
the concept, like the fundamental concept, because I do a lot of qualitative risk analysis in my actual job, and I've done this in my other jobs before too. So like I analyze these kinds of risks, and there's a thing called like a SOC 1 audit, and there's other types of audits you can do, but or like Sarbanes-Oxley has rules about this. But the gist is the idea of separation of duties, meaning you have developers. Developers cannot ever touch production. You have QA. Developers cannot touch QA systems. You have operations. Operations troubleshoots production systems. They can never see the source code of the development systems. They can never touch developer systems or the source code repository.
Right.
You separate the roles, and you don't just separate them with rules. You separate them with hard IT controls.
Right. So with a combination of network security, right, of, firewalls and these sorts of things,
Yep.
and also, authentication mechanisms like
Yep.
SSH and such, it becomes physically and mathematically impossible for people to connect to a place that they are not supposed to connect to.
Yep. So if someone, like any employee of any company, connects to something they shouldn't have and fucks it up, either they maliciously and with ill intent broke in, which again, that means your security sucks ass.
Yeah.
Or
it's really hard to break through SSH.
Two, your company's controls suck ass and it's your company's fault.
I think the only way it could happen at our company would be like if somebody was like SSH'd into a machine, and which they would only do in like a crazy situation to begin with, right? And they didn't lock their computer and they got up and walked away, and someone else came over and was like,
But again, that's malicious intent.
That's what I'm saying, right? It's like that's the kind of thing that would have to happen.
But even then, that's a violation of procedures. Like, so most companies, like you have DevOps, right? Or operations teams was what they used to be called. So like in any company I've ever worked for, in like most places, say you have your production system, like you run Twitter, right? There's servers that are running the real Twitter live right now. The only people who can ever like SSH into those servers are the people on the operations team whose sole job it is to troubleshoot problems with those systems and to deploy new builds to
and
those
also
systems.
something that's so big like Twitter is built in such a way with such redundancy that they would just like, if they needed to actually do something to specific servers like that, they would just remove them from the Twitter would continue working.
Yep.
And they would mess with them and then add them back to the real Twitter.
So let's
and
say-
almost everything they do would not be done by hand direct to machines. It would be through automation things that were separate. They would talk to these automation servers that would then, orient the real servers,
Yep.
right? And that layer in between is like you can go push a button that says like increase capacity or deploy this new build or
Yup.
something like that, and you just push this one button. You couldn't go do anything by hand and fuck it up. It's that tested code that does that deployment that does everything.
Yep. Like here's an example from 2 different companies I worked. Almost 2, 2.5. 'cause
I've
one
never
of them-
worked at a place that was stupid.
Yeah, no,
is
I've
the
never worked
point.
at partly because where have I ever worked? Hospitals, dangerous factories, and Wall Street.
Yeah.
Like 2 of my jobs were death on the line if we fucked
I've
up.
never worked at a place as stupid as the place where this person supposedly worked.
Nope. But even if it's a single server, like I've administered systems usually in an operational capacity where like there is a single production server doing something really important. So first we have developers. On their own subnet, they'll never even know, like they'll never see a production server. They write code, they test code, they write unit tests, they live in their own world. When they have code that's ready to go to production, they check it in, and then the QA team has a separate procedure, like on the other side of a firewall, where they check out compiled, like code ready to run. They then test it in an environment. They'll never see production. They'll never see dev. When they test it and they think it's good, they stage it to the operations team. The operations team stages it into a pre-production environment. And they do like their sanity checks and like practice the deployment. And then usually there's an automated process saying, okay, the thing we put in pre-production, the CTO signed off, hit this button, and the next morning it'll be running in prod via an automated process. That way, at no point is there any way for anyone to fuck up the thing that they are not responsible for. Like, ops can fuck up the production system because their job is to not fuck it up. Dev can fuck up, like, the current active build in the dev environment. But, of course, you can just roll back,
Right. That's the 2 other fuck ups of this specific instance, right? The other fuck up is they didn't back their shit up.
Well, they not
right?
only did not back
Even
it up.
if at my company, if you came into my company and I just let you connect to the MySQL prompt on the production
Yep,
database,
and I'm just like, drop tables, ha
and
ha,
you're
ha.
just like, delete all databases, ma ha 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 ha.
Drop star from, just drop everything.
I can go to Oz and click like one button and roll the database back 5 minutes, and it rolls back 5 minutes. And
Yep.
even if you fuck that up, I have a nightly backup. I can restore it in like a minute. I just type like 2 commands and it restores it.
Yep.
And it's really fast because it's not that big.
And in like more controlled environments, like, the production ops thing.
And if you deleted all the backups, well, they're in more than one place. It's like it would be so difficult
Yep.
for you to actually cause any damage.
So if I, as an operation person, like we deploy the build and we fuck it up, there was always a very explicit procedure that had to be verified before you could even roll something out into production that says, if it fucks up, here is how to roll it back. And you test that procedure.
Our rollback is so easy. We've
Yep.
done it so many times.
Our rollback in.
We actually used to do it more, but like we haven't done it in so long, but it worked every time.
Yep. Because that's the other thing.
Never had it not work.
You need procedures to separate all these things and to each, like whoever's responsible for stuff, like what they're supposed to do. You have procedures for rolling back, and you have procedures to confirm that all that stuff actually works. A lot of companies
that last part.
take quote unquote backups, and then one day, like the production system fails, and they take the backup and they like run the script to load it into production, and it just doesn't work because they've never tested it.
A backup that you haven't tried to actually restore with is
I
not a
saw,
backup.
in fact, I saw a system once where someone had a really important wiki that was like all the internal business documentation, like, serious stuff. So they had a primary server and they had a backup server. One day, they fucked up and deleted everything on the primary server.
And that sent those deletes over to the
Yep.
backup
The
slave.
redundancy was just the MySQL database running everything
Yep.
was a master slave. So the backup system was literally deleted in the same millisecond that the production system was.
That's
So-
how MySQL's master slave works. It just
Yep.
sends the MySQL commands to the other server.
Yeah, we've done shows on that before. The difference between high availability and disaster recovery,
So
two
the-
different things.
So the third mistake here, and this is the craziest mistake. I don't even think you need to explain this.
Yup.
Like in the instructions this new developer was following in order to set up their environment, was like, it was like, oh, create, you set up your own local database, create username and password, whatever. But that document had the production host username and password in it, and you were supposed to like replace them
that depending on
with
the
your
industry
own.
you're in,
But they just copied and pasted.
depending on the industry you're in, that violates laws.
Yeah, but
Don't put no human being. So in like the place, like the broker dealer I worked at, right? there's technically a root password to the production, like the Linux servers, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was unique for every server. That existed in two places three places in the world. There was in an envelope in a safe deposit box that like the chairman of the board had a key to.
Mm-hmm.
It was in like a little safe in the president's office that could be opened in an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in an encrypted like file that required multiple encryption keys from like the CTO and the head of operations to open.
See, what I do on production servers these days, or all servers actually, is the root password is unknown to every human being on Earth. It's just generated completely randomly. It's really big.
So you sudo su.
Right, and then if you want to connect to this machine, you have to SSH into it with a key. There's no other way to connect to it but with the SSH key.
Every server I administer, there are no passwords for anyone.
Yep, there's no passwords at all. Everything is keys, really big SSH keys, and you can add and remove them from the authorized host keys file, whatever.
Yeah. But what's really crazy is that this company is like, it's such a fuck up on so many levels, but the fact that they're like threatening to sue this kid is ridiculous.
Yeah, a lot of people in the comments, because this is posted on like every tech site ever, were like, I'm a lawyer, I'll cover you, right?
Yep.
Call me if they actually sue you.
If anything, actually, depending on the state or the country you're in, and I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, being fired for that is arguably wrongful termination.
Possibly.
Because you were following instructions that were probably poorly written,
Right.
that were probably written by the CTO once, and they never really looked at him again.
So this is something else that bothers me, and it's actually a problem at my work, right? And it's related to this, right? Is this kid, or I assume a kid, right?
Well, anyone who's junior in any position ever, I just call kid. That's
right.
just...
Was copying and pasting the commands from this document.
Yep.
Right? And at work, people are always pressuring me to like write instructions that they can use and then copy paste. And there are people who are doing things and they're just following procedures without understanding what they're doing. And I'm like, if you don't understand what you're doing to the point at which you would not need a document to tell you, and then you shouldn't be doing those things. Right? It's like the reason that if you're going to give a person a list of commands to copy and paste to set up their dev environment, you just set it up for them. They're not learning anything.
Yep.
Right? It's like if you're a professional developer, it's understandable if you're a driver of a car not to know how a car works completely. Right? You should know the basics. But if your job is professional developer, you should understand what the hell is going on to the point at which you don't need to be copying and pasting these instructions. Or even if things are new to you, you should be learning them as you go to the point at which you don't need to copy paste them.
Here's an
you
example,
can actually understand
like
them.
a real tech example of the driver of the car versus the, I guess, developer of the car. So the developer will make it, like, say you have a really critical like system that runs on a single server, like some internal enterprise thing, like a trading system or something real important that isn't like a distributed cloud thing. And the developers know how to deploy it or like do a change to it or whatever, but the person on the far other end of the chain in the operations team who is going to deploy it the final time for real to like the staging area for production, that person might get a set of instruction that includes copy paste this command then this command, because their only mandate is to do exactly what the QA team and the dev team signed off on. They don't need to know necessarily what it does. In fact, it's better if they could do it not knowing anything. That way it's basically idiot proof because the work was already all done by the developers and the QA
But
team.
if that person is mindlessly entering commands, then you could have just had the QA team push a button. You don't need this other person.
So the reason there is simply that the script might be push a button. The idea is you make it push a button in the end, but the QA team shouldn't be the ones to push the button. The QA teams push the button, but you should have another team.
But if the person doesn't understand what they're doing, they're useless. As soon as something goes wrong, they're going to be like, QA team, help me. And now the QA team is making the decisions, and you're just having this person basically in between the brain that knows something and the keyboard.
It's like, why? No.
It's like if I know everything, and you're a know nothing, all you know how to do is type. Why should we use your fingers to do the typing when all the good stuff is in my brain?
I can tell you exactly why.
That's pointless.
I can tell you exactly why. A big part of this is things like Sarbanes-Oxley. The people who are administering the system, like the DevOps people, they have access to like legally data, information, or whatever that might have regulatory or legal consequences to them knowing or having access to.
Right,
So,
but if they do not have the knowledge to where they need to use my brain and they're just basically all they have is keyboard fingers as in replacing my keyboard fingers, then fire those fuckers. Hire
Nope.
someone who fucking knows something to
Nope.
do that job that's
reason
actually
is,
useful. They shouldn't have to.
legally-
If you have to call me, then you don't deserve your job, right?
Legally, the
you
reason
shouldn't have
is-
to call me to have
the
that
reason
job.
is those people legally cannot have access to QA systems under any
It doesn't.
capacity.
They don't need to have access to the systems, but they need to have technological knowledge to where they are more than just someone who types what someone else told them to
Yes,
type.
Scott, I know you
they
say
need to
that.
think for themselves
The
and be able
reality
to.
is
if you
there are not enough people on Earth to hire for those roles.
Right. So I'm just saying, if you don't hire one of those not enough people on Earth, you end up like this shitty fucking company here that loses their production database.
See, no, because
you didn't spend enough to hire people who knew something at every
Places
level.
who are confident, it doesn't matter if the dev team knows what they're doing for like a rollout or something, because it's already all been tested and is bulletproof. And if they fuck it up, they have backup procedures and fail and all this stuff in place. The problem was that this company assumed a whole bunch of shit, had no controls, had no backups, had basically this company had nothing. And there are a lot of companies that basically have nothing.
If you want to hire ops people, they should be people that can solve the problem on their own and don't,
Oh,
are
no,
not just typing
my
things and not just
preference-
copy and pasters.
My preference is to only hire developers or IT people for QA and operations roles. That is my preference, and that is
Right.
what I've
That's
done.
what I'm saying. Is
whenever
that
I've had
nobody should be able to have a tech job that pays a lot and responsibilities when all they know how to do is copy and paste.
But just make sure
Right.
there are examples where the people in QA and production ops legally can never see the source code.
That's fine, but those people should not be so dumb that all they can do is copy and paste. They should have the brains of their own and shouldn't have to call the developer, right, to tell them what to type in because they don't understand anything about computers.
Well, usually what ends up
Right.
happening in those situations, like say there's a problem in production and the developer needs to troubleshoot it, then you do a thing where like the ops person logs into a system and they're the one typing because the dev person might know all about the code, but might not know anything about the exact details of like the configuration of this Linux server.
right, but
So
we're
the ops person types, but the dev person says,
But
I
that's
need to see this.
But
I
that
need
ops-
a JStack.
that-
I
right.
need this. I need that.
That's different, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about a situation where the developer knows everything and the ops person knows nothing, and they're literally typing in the exact commands that
Yup.
the developer is typing because they are a know-nothing who simply copies and pastes, literally. And you're talking about a situation where it's like, oh, check the logs, tell me if you see any errors from the whatever, right?
Yup.
It's like, oh, well, the person knows something, right? It's like you can just communicate with them on a higher level. They're doing useful things.
So here, I'll give you a good
right?
example.
That's
Like,
a person who's useful.
I'll give you a real example. When I was at that broker, when we did certain kinds
But
of
if I'm saying
deployments-
like type ls, go to
No. But like, so everyone on our ops team was like super pro IT. Like we knew our shit about Linux and we knew our shit about the systems, but at the same time, the instructions for a rollout would have copy pastes of like the specific things to do because that was what the QA team signed off
right.
on us
But if
doing.
you looked at those things, did you understand?
Yes,
what they
I knew
were?
what they did.
Yeah, you weren't blindly copying and pasting a mystery command, and then when looking at the output, going, "Oh, what happened? No, I don't know. Oh, what does that command do? I don't know. Can you read that command and explain it to me?" No, I just copied and pasted it because my job is copy paste man.
Type who? What? Type who? Who should I type? What?
Yeah, exactly.
Type man who? There's no man there.
It's like you obviously want to create these layers, but you don't want to have one of the layers just be copy paste man. If you
Yep.
just have copy paste man, just give someone 2 fucking jobs if the law doesn't,
Yep.
prevent you from doing
The
so.
problem is in finance and in a lot of places, the law literally is set up that way.
Then
where-
you got to hire at least one person in each layer who's not a copy paste
Yep.
man.
Pretty much the minimum you need is dev, QA, production have to be 3 completely separate groups that do not have access to each other's systems. If you can't,
Well,
have-
if you're in a less serious line of business, you just need to separate the dev QA and the production. You only need the 2 layers, right? It's not really a big deal if QA and dev
Yeah.
are messing around with
But
each other.
I'll put it
If you're making like a video game or something, it's like it's no big deal.
yeah,
But if you're making, a financial thing
However,
or a medical thing
I think
or
even
a
with a
rocket,
video game, unless you're a 1 or 2 person studio, you probably still want all 3 layers only because of totally
you want to
separate
have the
problem.
layers, but you don't need to strictly separate the non-production.
Oh, yeah,
you
like
just
you
need
could
to separate the production
You
from
could
the
let the
non-production.
developers go log into a QA system to examine something.
Yeah, it's like who gives a shit if it's not
But
super secure or whatever.
You definitely don't want developers also doing QA because if you
no,
wrote
they
the
shouldn't
code,
be doing. They should not be doing
Yeah.
the QA. No.
like developer, it's okay for the
I'm
developer.
just talking about the access of systems and information. right?
Developer can write a unit test for their code as long as QA writes their own unit test for the same code. If you're doing unit tests, I mean, there's different kinds of development.
Right, but that's but the point is the only thing you need no matter what is that production not production barrier.
Yeah.
And you only need that second QA dev barrier if your business is super serious.
Or if you just make any amount of money, because as soon as you make amount of money, you probably want to have that extra
if
layer
you make
to,
a ton of money, it's super serious,
Yeah.
isn't it?
to cover your ass. Because the reality is, this company fucked up. And it is literally like it is the fault of the CTO, 100% that this company fucked up. I
Yep.
wish I knew what company it was.
Yeah.
That'd be really funny to find. I'm sure I could find out.
It's probably not somebody's big.
Could be. I've seen big fuck ups at big companies before.
I can't imagine it would be somebody's big that has like just one production database only that could be deleted.
I've seen some shit.
How big could it be? And all the websites we go to are still working, so it wasn't any of them.
True. Slash shots up. I'm on it right now.
Right. It's not places.
Twitter's
big.
running as far as I know right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the moral of all this, separation of duties, and that developer is not the problem at that company. If you think that developer is at fault for this,
Nobody
you don't know anything.
Nobody thinks that. It's just a funny story because that someone actually supposedly this actually really happened and they posted this story literally everywhere on the internet. And because everyone was like, "Oh my God, the company's so bad," it spread like wildfire.
Yep.
Right.
Because that company is so bad. It's one thing if you have a company that plays fast and loose. Because you can think of it this way: the more strict you are about that stuff, the more money and time it takes to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're fast and loose with that stuff, you can get product out a lot faster.
And then also crash and burn.
Yep.
From one guy messing
So
up.
a big part of corporate qualitative risk analysis, which I alluded to at the beginning, isn't necessarily controlling for all that stuff. It's just understanding the risks of playing fast and loose and the risks of being more formal in that stuff and deciding what level of risk you as a company are willing to accept. If you're making the next Twitter, cowboy it up. Who gives a fuck?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, this company fucked up so bad that they were cowboying, but they didn't even have a backup horse.
Nope.
Like they didn't have a horse in the stable, even halfway ready to go. They didn't even have a backup of their production database.
They went on vacation with one pair of underwear, and then they shat in it.
I went to Anime Boston once. I forgot to pack socks, so I had one pair of socks for the whole weekend, and I washed them in the sink every day.
I got a thing of the day coming up that's poop related.
Uh-oh.
You're gonna love it.
Uh-oh. I have an anecdote that is poop related from the race that I'll save for the next show. Warn
Someone
me.
pooped at the race.
So the porta potty that was
that
nearest,
one, right? Okay, I know
Yeah.
that. Yeah, okay.
I have never in my life seen a porta potty disaster on that scale in person.
All right, we're good. I thought you were gonna say someone pooped during the race.
No, that happens during marathons a lot, which is a big part of why I don't run marathons. Yeah, a 5K is 20 minutes. A 5K is 30 minutes, even if you're not that fit. A 5K is an hour if you don't exercise at all. Now we're done. What do you got?
Someone posted a thing online and it was like, all right, you're in Manhattan.
All right.
You live in Brooklyn.
All right.
You shit your pants.
All right.
What do you do?
So I'm in Manhattan. I live in Brooklyn. I shit my pants. Go into a Starbucks. Go into the bathroom. Clean myself up as much as possible. Throw away the underwear. That's the answer. If you've done it so badly that the pants are fucked, you do that first. Then you go to an H&M. You buy the cheapest pair of pants. Go into the Starbucks. Electric Boogaloo. That is the answer to that problem.
Pretty much what people wrote, but it was there were a lot of comments this happened to me, that's what I did. It's no matter what, it sucks because
Hey,
you shit your pants.
that could be a good.
It's not gonna be good.
That could be, I think, a pretty good Thursday throwaway show. Let's get the listener to give us 10 scenarios, and we decide how to handle each of those scenarios. Yeah, once we get a list of 10 scenarios, we could just do a whole show, and all we do is address the scenarios one by one. All right, let me do the Patreon thing, and then I am done. Into the patron manager. All current patrons. Let's do this. Save my game, or save my thing, and all right. And the patrons for this episode of GeekNights are Nicholas Brandau, Alan Joyce, Heidi McNichol, Amanda Duchette, and Thomas Hahn. MyStady.com, William Eisnerose, Jeremy Miner. That When a Girl Walks In with an Itty Bitty Waist and a Round Thing, a genuine bona fide electrified 6-car monorail. Roncy Roncesvalles. Rebecca Dunn, The Terrible Secret of Space, 421 Creations. As far as I can tell, it's just a box canyon in the middle of nowhere. Shervin Von Horrell, Rare Laval, James David White, Rochelle Montanona, Superboy. I paid $5 to make him say pickle. Sailor Vista, Matthew Smith, Don Schleich, Jar Tovishin, Joshua Joestar, Sean Yeager, Sam Cordery, Clinton Walton, Ren from New Zealand, Ryan Perrin, Mr. Black, Brian Cedrone, Finn, Chris Midkiff, Chris Knox, Taylor Redmond, Sean Klein, Chris Reimer, and Thomas Hahn. And now I leave you with...